through the Ontario Museum Association to encourage people to actually visit their local cultural attractions. And there's a lot of things going on in May, not just in the art gallery, the museum, the theater as well. So we really encourage the general public to go out and see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Make sure everybody gets out and learn and enjoy and tell all your friends. There's a lot of people who don't know all the great things going on at our museum and art gallery and other heritage sites. Next item on the agenda is delegations, and tonight we have Terrence Herbold with us regarding the taxi fares and zone changes. Welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, first of all, my name is Terrence Herbold. I own Kendall Cab here in Woodstock. I'd like to express my thanks to the city staff for all their work looking at the taxi situation, comparing what was there, and helping us formulate what I feel is a much better streamline, one that's more reflects today's differences in the city of Woodstock. Since the previous, I believe it was 2014, the previous rate setting, as with everything in life, our cost input has gone up tremendously. Probably the biggest item for me would be the fleet insurance for the vehicles. They've increased almost $3,000 per vehicle since 2014. And of course, we all groan when we see the posted sign at the gas station. My gas bill last month was $16,400 for 14 vehicles. So I feel that the designation and reallocating of the zones is a much fairer representation of the amount of time it takes to actually get dispatched the call and complete the call. You know, basically what we're providing a service that unfortunately has a very low return on investment, and we really feel that this price increase, especially given the fact that we suggested $1 reduction for seniors, is a fair resolution of the issues as far as me as an owner at Kendall Cab. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Well, thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next delegation is Ryan Raycraft regarding the taxi fares and zone changes. Welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you for taking the time to meet with us this evening. A few things I just wanted to add to Terry here. I'm Ryan Raycraft. My wife and I own United Cab here in Woodstock. Within the delegation form, I did highlight a few factors that have affected us from 2014 till now. Firstly, cost of living, as everything does go up. If we look at a key indicator being housing costs, we've seen about a 40% increase in the cost of housing since 2014. Operating costs, we've been hit with shop rate increases of 17%, insurance rate increases of 21%. Fuel rates from 2014 aren't so different than today, but with the carbon tax, we know we're going to see around $1.32 or maybe higher. So that represents about a 5% increase to now. And then additionally, minimum wage increases, so that affects our office staff wages as well. Development of the city, primarily north of Pittock Lake, is one of the largest geographic obstacles for us. Sample call section that was completed prior to our meeting in January of this year indicates about an average call distance of 4.2 kilometers. Calls in this area generally range from 8 to 12 kilometers. While that currently represents less than 5% of call volume, that area continues to grow and business continues to grow. Point 4 was driver retention, primarily a result of the minimum wage increase. Drivers within the taxi industry are commission-based pay, and retention of drivers has been difficult for some companies here, some taxi companies, and was the primary reason for the increase in Stratford in January 1st of 2018. The position of United Cab, at least, was more a wait and see. We were hoping that an increase in minimum wage would drive additional business. That's proved to be difficult in the sense that, yes, the business has increased, but as the business increases, service levels tend to decrease if you maintain the same level of operations. Suggested resolutions from council did mention transportation networks such as Lyft and Uber. In my analysis prior to the meeting in January, I did use Uber as a benchmark to see where we were with current rates versus where Uber is. As we all know, it's definitely had impact in other municipalities. The result of the review was that Uber represented an increase of 22% over current rates. Anybody can check this out as an Uber app on their phone, but I additionally reviewed that cross-section of calls against the proposed rates that are in front of you today. And the result is still the rates are about 2% lower than Uber rates. So I feel that the proposal is a fair one. I hope you feel the same. Suggested resolutions from City Council also did mention a deregulation of taxi fares. I thought it'd be worth mentioning that United Cab is not against that option. I do think that does provide a competitive landscape for the taxi industry. Additionally, it provides taxi companies within the city to better prepare to compete against taxi network companies such as Uber or Lyft, should they make a presence within the city. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to field those.
Thank you. Questions of council. Councillor Talbot.
Thank you. Through to Ryan. How many cars, or how big is your fleet?
10 cars.
Thank you. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Ryan. And maybe I should have asked this of Terrence as well. But so my biggest thought here, if you read social media, of course, this has gone out, and there's a lot of talk now of Uber and you know, go to any big city, of course, and that's who you call it, seems. Do you really fear that here? Like, I like our small city and everything else. I like our cab companies and everything. Do you fear Uber? Is that just part of your business plan? You know they're coming eventually? Because I feel if we are raising prices up, now all of a sudden they're going to look at it, so that's about the same money, so hey, let's go to Woodstock.
Yeah.
You know, is that a fear, or is that just me?
It has to be. I think to not be conscious of that competitive threat is what we've seen as a demise in taxi companies in other municipalities. You know, it became very much a fat and happy, protected scenario in multiple cities. I came from Kitchener-Waterloo myself. I drove for Waterloo Taxi there. I'm very familiar with the industry there. And really what you had was an equity in plates that we don't have here, which makes us as taxi companies more able to compete with network transportation companies such as Uber and Lyft, because we don't need to buy those plates. We pay a relatively nominal fee to lease the plates, where plate values got north of $200,000 in Kitchener-Waterloo. So as a customer, you're subsidizing that plate for the taxi driver owner. And that's also you know, as far as worrisome of competition from Uber and Lyft, that was primarily what drove the analysis prior to the meeting back in January is there was mention of potentially bringing in a metered system, which was tabled and quickly discarded within the meeting. But the concern was if we did go to that system, that we would set a rate that would be competitive with Uber or Lyft. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you. Further questions of council? Councillor Shannon Burke.
From the mayor through the delegation, I guess more as a matter of clarification, what is the total number of licenses now in the city of Woodstock among the three companies?
Among the three companies, Terry, you have 20? Okay, so it would be 31? No, 41. 41, yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Talbot.
Thank the chair through to Ryan again. Just going to the additional person rate. In
Yes.
reading the report, kind of the idea was that you would drop that and with the new rate fares. There was a few other things that you were changing. So if you're going to the farthest point and it's $15, you have 4 places the person, you can put 4 people in the taxi for $15.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of council? Seeing none, we'll deal with those delegations under the report when we get to it. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. Councillor Accioni.
Moved by myself, the Woodstock City Council receive the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program report as information.
Thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And next item on the agenda, the start of construction season, tender award for Ingersoll Ave reconstruction. Councillor Fraser.
Woodstock City Council award the tender for the reconstruction of Ingersoll Ave to Yukon Construction Limited in the amount of $1,018,546.62, inclusive of HST. And further, that the amount over the approved budget be covered by the funds in the asphalt reserve.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Schattenberg. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next up is the Strategic Asset Management Policy. Councillor Lauder.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve Council Policy AS011, Asset Management Policy in accordance with Section 3 of the Ontario Regulation 588-17, Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure.
Thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Tate. Discussion? Seeing Councillor Schattenberg.
Yeah, through to the mayor, I guess, to the CA, David Query. The city of Woodstock was to hire somebody to be asset management, sort of a consultant to prepare the reports for the city of Woodstock, or was it going to be a third party?
Your worship, through to Councillor Schadenberg, council approved in the recent budget an additional position for the purposes of strategic asset management creation. So that person will be hired roughly mid-year this year.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next up on the agenda is smoking in city parks. Councillor Fraser.
The Woodstock City Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw amendments in order to prohibit smoking and vaping of tobacco and cannabis in all city parks and on all city trails.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Tate. Discussion? Councillor Lauder.
Yes, through the mayor to Mr. Connors, would you like to let the public know what this is all about?
Your worship, through to the councillor's question, What this is just to provide some clarity for park staff on what type of signage really to put up in our parks. In October 17th, 2018, the Ontario government passed the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. And with that, it's made some major changes from last year to this year in our parks. What it's done is not only in front of the community centers or areas such as the aquatic center is smoke-free, it's the entire property that it sits on. So that means all of Southside Park is now smoke-free due to the act. And this is, the same goes for Cowan Park Sportsplex, the community complex, including the ball fields that sit on the same property, and Museum Square. We just learned because of the museum, they have children's programs and it falls under that. So those major parks all are going to have a lot of changes to them, as well as they'll still have the 20-meter offset from any recreational or playground. This makes it fairly confusing, I would contend, for residents on where they can't smoke. We thought one of the things that we could do is just do a complete ban. People will understand that, rather than I can smoke here but I can't smoke there, and it just becomes confusing, and it would just run into problems with residents.
Councillor Shannon Burke.
Through the mayor to Brian Connors as well. Talk a little bit about the onus on enforcement of any proposed bylaw that we'll pass at some point in time. And the other thing being is because this is kind of province-wide, there must be other municipalities that are going through these same hurdles right now as far as trying to exactly define how they want to put their smoking bylaws in. And of course, vaping is included in marijuana as well.
Your Worship, through to the councillor's question, there is several communities that have already gone through this. As part of the package, there is a collection of smoke-free places where bylaws have exceeded the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, so that's in the package. There are some communities that have gone to outright bans. Those would be City of Kingston, City of Markham, City of Ottawa, Town of Essex, Huron County, Town of King, and Town of Tecumseh. Some are in progress, which would just be the trail system. I know it says in here the City of Hamilton and Durham region are looking at that, and Windsor has adopted that. There was another question, sorry.
Onus on the enforcement of the bylaw change?
The enforcement would be city bylaw, but for the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, Southwest Public Health is also called in when there's infractions, and they can certainly issue tickets under their mandate.
Thank you. Further questions of council? Councillor Accioni.
Thank you, Your Worship. More of a general statement, maybe, Brian, you might be able to add something to it, but enforcement is a big concern, and if you're looking at social media, everybody, of course, is blowing up on that about, like, how do you, now you got to rat somebody out, or a cop's going to drive by, see you smoking, and, pull you over and give you a ticket and such. First off, can city police do that, or is this going to be just a bylaw only? Where does it draw the line, and who does enforce this completely?
Your Worship, through to the councillor's question, the city police can enforce all city bylaws, so they could issue tickets as well as the bylaw enforcement officers. We do have the same issue right now with dogs off leash. That is another bylaw, and that is one that some folks choose not to do, and we struggle to ensure that they do that for the health and well-being of the entire community.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser.
It's more of a comment, no, especially since I'm a reformed smoker. I never quit. I just don't smoke. But I think Mr. Connors said it best. You know, the best way to do this is put a complete ban on it. There's going to be a lot of complaints, and there's going to be a lot of transition. But I think eventually with education and some enforcement, and I remember when the smoking ban came into effect for bars, restaurants, and other businesses, and then vehicles. I know there was joint efforts made for enforcement, but the enforcement was more targeted towards education between police and bylaw enforcement officers. And at that time, the province had enforcement officers too for smoking, and through some enforcement, which also brought education, eventually we ended up with restaurants and bars that were smoke-free. One of my concerns is the vaping and cannabis that is pungent to a lot of people. So you can't just pick out cigarette smoke or cigars or pipes. You have to consider it all, and we have to respect everybody in the community. So there's less smokers now than there used to be, and I guess they'll have to get used to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of council? You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the taxi fares. Councillor Tate.
I'll move the motion of option 1, approve the changes to fares and zones as proposed by the taxi industry. That Woodstock City Council approve the proposed changes to Schedule A of Municipal Code, Chapter 643, Taxi Limousine, and the necessary bylaw be prepared.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Fraser. Discussion? Councillor Tate.
Just for everyone's benefit, just to some of the comments that the presentation made, insurance costs have gone crazy for taxis. It's very difficult. There's 3 carriers of all carriers for insurance for taxis, and they probably saw the fares increase last year, and this year transportation to do with any auto is going up again. So the prices, if you think you pay a lot for auto, they pay about 5 times of what a normal person pays.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder.
Through the mayor to Mrs. Humphreys, and I know that there's on Facebook and such, they're saying that it's the city that have put the fares up. And could you just kind of let the public know and tell us how the fares are arrived at, that I think that you work together with the taxi companies?
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Lauder. So here in Woodstock, our standard practice has always been to not actively pursue, on the city's behalf, increases to the fares for taxis. What we do ask, though, is that the taxi companies get together and jointly come forward with a proposal. They know their business better, they know their costs better. As the report mentions, there has not been an increase since February of 2014. So we met with the taxi industry back in January. They got together, talked about the zones, came forward with a proposal for the zones. In that particular case, there's been significant growth in the city, so we needed to make a change there regardless. At that time, they also amongst themselves talked about the fares, and they came forward with a joint proposal to request us to bring it forward. So that was back in January. Obviously, there's been a bit of time until we've brought the report forward, because on our end, we wanted to do a little bit of research. Because in that particular case, it did seem to be a fairly substantial increase, so we wanted to look at some comparator municipalities and see where we fell. So based on that comparison, we could see that the fares actually fell sort of middle of the road when looking at these other municipalities. So from there, we bring it forward to council and ask council to support that. But the request does in fact come from the taxi industry, not from the city.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Shannon Burke.
Through the mayor, I guess to Amy Humphreys as well, the city clerk. How does this affect the accessibility vans, both operated by the city and by the taxi companies themselves?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Shannon Burke. So there would be no effect whatsoever on paratransit. The city's fares would remain the same. In terms of the accessible vans operated by the taxi companies, they are required to have 5% of their vehicle vehicles be accessible, that would not change. The fares for the accessible vehicles would be the same as any other fare. We actually have a requirement under AODA to have the same fares. There is a talk in the report and in the recommendations that came forward to have a different charge for a van. That is not for an accessible van, and we were very specific about the wording that we used in our recommendation. That would be if somebody asks for a van because they have 6 people or they need to buy a large package or a large item and bring it home, but that the fares for accessible transportation would be exactly the same.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Fraser?
Well, thank you, Worship. And again, more of a comment. I think the proposal from the taxi industry is more than fair for an increase. You go to other communities and take a taxi, it costs far more money to go that distance than it does here in Woodstock. So we've been fortunate that they hadn't asked for an increase for how many years? And a very deserving an increase. And it's still a very affordable mode of transportation, especially if you're leaving a bar and need to get home, right? They get you there, and it doesn't cost you much money. So I think people need to remember that, and when they're starting to type out their messages in social media.
Thank you. Councillor Accioni?
Thank you, Your Worship. More of a general statement as well, because a lot of people did reach out to me anyways on this one. There is a lot of concerns because of the perceived increases, and it is quite an increase, let's face it, percentage-wise. And, you know, until I actually read the details and looking at your costs, I mean, you're right, you do run a very skinny, low-profit type of business, and knowing the increases now that that I've seen you have, I mean, I definitely support this 100%, and glad you are keeping it reasonable. And of course, all 3 companies did come into agreement. We're very lucky here in the city that we can do that and come to something so reasonable. So thank you to all 3 of the companies.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot?
Chair, through to Mrs. Humphries. Is this something that we wait for them to come to us, or we don't go out to them? Is that correct? As far as looking at putting up the rates, like we don't suggest to them that, you know, time has gone by, maybe you should put your rates up. They come to us, basically, right?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Talbot, I mean, there's maybe some conversation about that at the counter when they are in renewing every year, but we do not proactively seek out rate increases.
Because, I mean, I'm thinking about it. We review our bus fares every year, every budget season. I'm wondering if this is something going forward, maybe let the new rates set in for a year or 2, but maybe possibly forward thinking in the industry every year. I mean, we do up our rates. We'll know what increases are in the community. That's how we look at our bus fares and stuff, even if it's a quarter or something. That's one way of doing it, so that it's not as shocking. It's a little bit slower and more gradual, and maybe it'd keep more current. It's just an idea, but that might be something that going forward that we would look at.
Thank you. Further questions of council? You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And our next item on the agenda is new business. Councillor Tate?
Whereas Oxford County Report PW 2019-07 Advancing Zero Waste Update was received by County Council at its meeting of April 24th, and whereas this report has been circulated to area municipalities for information, and now therefore be it resolved that Woodstock City Council direct the city engineer to prepare a report with comments on the report, recommendations, and the potential impact to city residents.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion, Councillor Tate.
The reason I brought this forward, I'm very concerned about the amount of money being spent over at County Council, and our evening meetings, we don't have any press there. We don't have, it's not recorded. There's usually not, there's almost nobody there. A lot of stuff is getting rammed through, and they have huge price tags on them. This agenda, they like to bury us in paperwork, so I think it was 580 pages, this report alone. I can't remember how many pages it was. But the city engineer and the CEO did get together and gave us a couple of Cole's notes on it, and it's, so this is a facility that they're trying to ram through. The price tag on it was 14 to 42 million. They didn't know the price. They didn't know how we were going to pay for it. Bag tags could go up to $8 per person in Oxford County. They wanted us to vote on this, to go forward with this at the last meeting after having it for 5 days without the public being aware of anything that was going on. It's a concern. We did get it deferred for later. I'm not sure what the other councils are doing. We had hoped that they were sending it to the other tiers for comment, but they did not. So that's why I brought it forward. So I'm just trying to get the public aware of what's going on and pay attention what's going on over there, because there's a lot of money getting spent and it's getting rammed through. So the three of us, your representatives from Woodstock, did not support it, but we were lucky. We got it deferred 6-4, but I don't know the next time if it comes back, if it is. So, you know, anybody in the county, you need to get a hold of the mayors and put pressure on them. This has got to stop. And what they were talking about was maybe eliminating, I think it was maybe 13% more garbage at this price tag. So I just want everybody to be aware, so the city engineer will bring a report and be more information.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And tonight we, let's see, we have no bylaws, so questions and addresses. We'll start with the top letter in the alphabet tonight. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to, I guess, backtrack here in a quick second. So smoking in city parks is actually, I did not actually vote in favor of that. Just, I'm not a smoker, never been a smoker. I have a tough one with it, knowing everybody has their rights and everything else. And for clarity, of course, I did expect it to pass, but that's a tough one. I apologize to the people that do smoke, because I have a tough time with that one as it is. But anyways, I'll move on, so thank you. Reusapalooza is coming up Saturday, May the 11th, 8:30 to 2 p.m., speaking of recycling and everything. Victoria Day Parade, of course, is coming up May the 20th, 10 a.m., so Monday morning. Early is the Victoria Day Parade, of course, of the long weekend. And speaking of long weekend, hope everybody does have a safe and happy long weekend. And City of Woodstock camps, make sure you have your What's on Woodstock handy, as well as the city website. This is the time of year where you want to enroll your children and have fun and be safe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. This weekend, the Friends of the Library have a book sale at the library on both the 4th and the 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So they always have loads of books there, so it's a great time to come and get your reading. The Fanshawe Choir, their concert, the spring concert, is on Saturday night, 7 p.m. at St. David's Church on Springbank Ave. And the Southgate Garden Extravaganza and Relay for Life breakfast is on May the 11th at Southgate. And on Sunday is the service for the Battle of the Atlantic at the Navy Club. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
Pass tonight, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser.
I'll pass too, because I'm going to start coughing again. Thank you.
Welcome back, with or without a cough. Councillor Shannon Burke.
I have as many as 4 items, so you bear with me. I guess one thing is about the Environmental Advisory Committee took part in the Thames River cleanup this past weekend, and a lot of emails were going amongst the committee members to talk about the amount of, let's just call them plastic bags and stuff that have been flying around and getting stuck in bushes and trees and everything like that. So it was quite an interesting, but first of all, I want to congratulate the Environmental Advisory Committee and those who did participate in the Thames River cleanup. Several bags of garbage naturally were picked up along the 11th line just west of Burgess Park. So I'm going to suggest to maybe them as a delegation to come forward to City Council sometime before the trails system opens up more over Piddock and whatnot, to really talk about the fact that, I mean, quite frankly, if you're a nature lover, why are you throwing out garbage? To me, it just seems to be the biggest odd negative that could possibly be out there. Stages is going on this weekend. That's at Theatre Woodstock, the kids' productions, Pirate Frank and Charlotte's Web. Friday night there's a show, and there's 2 on Saturday at 2 and at 7 p.m. Both my kids are participating. Want to mention that this weekend is the 12th annual Oxford Studio Tour. It's all over Oxford County for artists, May 4th and 5th, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. both days. But there's certainly a lot of local participation, including Kathy Grew, Kate Innes, Kathy Bingham, Julie Hawkins, Carrie Axon, Bruce and Ruth Hartley. The list goes on and on. Just check out the website or Google Oxford Studio Tour for information on that. And one event that I'm taking part in myself on Sunday at College Avenue Secondary School. Registration's at 9 a.m. and the walk starts at 10 a.m. for the Walk So Kids Can Talk program. Now, it's sponsored nationally by the Bank of Montreal, Bell Media, The Source, Nestle, and locally by Boston Pizza and Heart FM. But obviously what it is participation and promotion of the Kids Help Phone. The walk is at College Avenue Secondary School. Like I say, it starts at 10 a.m., but registration at 9. And the phone number, by the way, is 1-800-668-6868 for the Kids Can Talk line. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
I just want to remind everybody again, and this is open for men and women, the Boys for Toys, May 9th. It's a United Way fundraiser. Tickets are $60. That's it.
Thank you. And want to remind everyone again about the time of year. We're starting to see a lot of motorcycles out, which also means there's going to be a lot of different bike nights and show and shines for cars and all kinds of things for our community partners and charities within the community. So make sure you stay up to date on what's going on. This coming Sunday, prior to the Battle of the Atlantic, you'll be able to go and support the Kids Help Phone. And thank you for Councillor Shannon Burke for filling in at that. We also have a walk happening at Southside Park for MS. So a lot of great things going on to help out all these different areas. We do have many other activities that are taking place coming up. There's Chamber of Commerce meetings. Now here's one I try to tell the kids at home not to eat French fries too often, but remember McHappy Day is coming up on Wednesday, May the 8th. There will be many city staff and councillors taking part in the drive-through, and don't worry, nobody is actually making those Big Macs for you, but sometimes they have us serve the coffee. Welkin is holding an open house on Wednesday evening on the 8th as well. Welkin is our lead agency for youth mental health and wellness, and whether you're a parent or grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or just a member of the community, if you don't know what Welkin does, make sure you show up for that open house. They're at the corner of Clark and Dundas. A lot of other great things that are taking place, so make sure you read the What's on Woodstock magazine. Make sure you watch the city website. Other community outlets such as Heart FM Media has a community calendar. And I'm surprised that no one here tonight mentioned about the Jays winning at Woodstock Day. And I think we all had a very good time. All of those citizens from Woodstock that went down with the special discounted price. Of course, that all relates back to Mr. Rogers being in our neighborhood when he was born and raised. And so that's quite a few years that we've been able to take advantage of that. And I know that many individuals here in the community have their box seats, so they were waving down at the crowds. This time we were on two sides of the field, and the first pitch went off without a hitch, and the anthems were done very well by Anna Belleth here. With that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Schadenberg. All those in favor? We are adjourned.